Good afternoon. Welcome to another edition of In-Depth School and Community, a topical show that looks at issues confronting our schools and the community here in Concord. And we've had a lot of shows in recent past, and I'm really excited about this one. This is something unique because it dovetails with a lot of work that's been done over the past summer in terms of where our school district is at, and especially at the high school. What kinds of things are we putting in place to make the school a more comfortable, compatible opportunity for students and teachers and administrators to work in a more collegial way. So I'm really pleased to have with me my distinguished guest, Miss Alice Richards. Thank you. Next to her, Miss Barb Higgins, who is a member of our school board and a proud 1981 graduate of Concord High School.
That's right.
And next to him, running on our group is Mr. Gavin Brown, who is a senior here at Concord High School. And so we're looking at policies, and one of the big policies that we wanted to look at was employee relations with students and how students interface with our teachers, our faculty, and many of the professional staff in our building. So let me turn to you first, Alice. Talk to us about why did you get involved in this project, and what has it meant for you?
Yeah, so Gavin and I are the two student reps to the school board, and so this year we knew that we really wanted to get students more engaged in what we were doing at the school board level. And we were working with Miss Pally, and she offered that one of the upcoming policies that they were going to work on at the policy committee was the student policy, student-teacher relationships policy. And so she offered that towards Gavin and I to work with her and the rest of the school board to bring that to students and teachers so we could get their feedback on it.
Right. And so, Barbara, your role, because you're a school board member, obviously, and
Right.
you are chair of the instructional committee.
Correct.
Which looks at, many of the programs that would be coming through the high school at some point.
Right.
I think you also just served as the sabbatical
Yep.
investigations.
Yep.
And so, talk to us about why you became interested in this.
So my big interest, so I taught in the district for 21 years, and I have
Right.
a strong connection through Parks and Rec with our young people.
Sure.
So I can't go anywhere without somebody knowing me.
Yeah.
A young person. And so last summer when, before you came along, when
Right.
things were still so freshly awful,
Yes.
and we were working together as a community, we had these amazing people that gave up hours of their summer to talk about policies and to look
Right.
at our policies and were they clear. And I actually looked around one day and thought, wow, we're talking about student-teacher relations and there's not a student or a teacher in this room.
Right.
So when the fall came and we could start to put normalcy back into place a bit and you arrived, we felt, we could all step back and really look at it. So
Sure.
it was such a pleasure
Yeah.
to see the survey and see their involvement and everything that they found out. That's a good conversation, which I'm excited to share.
It's great, and I'm glad that we have so many community members as well as students taking
Yeah.
an active role in this and having a conversation about how do we forge good collegial relations and how do we get at this issue of culture where people feel comfortable talking to one another.
And how do our guidelines not cut off inadvertently really positive interactions with students and teachers? And that's the piece of it sometimes. You have a logical policy and then you put it into place and you realize you've just eliminated, a kindergarten teacher's ability to hug a crying child. Like these things, it's not black and white at all.
Yeah, that's well said, Barbara. I
Yeah.
mean, those are real fundamental issues, and obviously what we're trying to get at here is protection
Yes.
for everybody, but at the same time, open lines of communication and being
Yes.
able to express how you feel about a given situation, whether you're a student, teacher, or any other educational professional.
Right.
Gavin, what's your role in all this?
So I've been working with Alice in similar fashion. I was
Yeah.
the representative last year
Right.
for the students on the school board,
Uh-huh.
and I felt that I wanted a more fulfilling role through
Yeah.
that this year.
Yeah.
And so we went and sought the opportunity to bring the survey to students and get a lot more student interaction this year.
Nice choice of words, fulfilling. So talk to us about how fulfilling this has been.
It's been amazing.
How
The
come?
people that I've gotten to work with
Yeah.
and the responses I've seen from students and the school board alike
Uh-huh.
have really shown me how important this interaction is.
Right.
And that I really hope to move forward doing more of it.
Okay, Alice, you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's shown to us how important it is to get that student feedback. There was a lot of things that I think even the members of the committee talked about when we met with them that they wouldn't have thought of right off the bat if they hadn't heard it from students. And so we've seen just from that survey and more that we hope to do going forward, how responsive and helpful their feedback is.
Can you share with us some of those findings, or is that something you have to keep under wraps?
No, I believe
yeah.
that's public knowledge as of this point. It
Yes,
can be found
it's
on the
been-
school board
yeah.
website.
All right, go ahead, Alice, help us out.
So one of the things that Barb talked about was the contact with students. So there is a lot of different areas of that, but one of the things we thought of was, so for example, you talked about hugging a crying child. There was a part of the policy that if that was put into place, you wouldn't have been able to do that.
Right.
Or another example is, which we're still working on the policy, but
Yeah.
there were some about the closed doors and the closed lights, the turned off lights, and we thought about what if you were trying to have a private conversation with your guidance counselor or another resource officer that we had, and you didn't want other people to be able to hear it, would that be something that you were prohibited from if that was put into place?
Yeah, you know what you're getting at is, there are so many individual circumstances that arise, so it's not one size fits all.
Yeah.
And though the policy is a great thing, because obviously you want to protect people
Yes,
at
definitely.
all costs and at all times, you also have to allow for those special considerations. Maybe it's a guidance counselor working with a troubled student. Maybe it's a special ed teacher who wants to do some extra help with a student who can only respond in certain ways that might go against kind of the general rules of that policy. And so you have to show some discretion about how that policy is going to be enforced, if you will, in terms of how you look at a given situation and what would be the best way to proceed given that situation.
Right.
Yeah.
There was a student at one of our big meetings at Millbrook in the fall. She graduated, she's a freshman in college now.
Right.
Layla, she's beautiful. And she commented at the meeting
Yeah.
about, in her high school experience, there were several times that she wanted a private conversation. And she
Right.
warned us in I don't know if you were here yet, but it was phenomenal. And she just said, this would take away any sense of safety I had.
Yeah.
So it was one of those moments, which I think it's why I'm so happy with all this, because she articulated it in a way that you couldn't argue with.
Yeah.
You couldn't take away the right of a student to feel safe in a private setting.
Right.
So how do we balance that with someone taking advantage of the privacy?
Right.
And that, of course, that's the fine line we walk. It's like a railroad trestle over a river. You have
Yes.
to find the balance.
Right.
And,
Right.
so most of my positive reactions to at that meeting when they shared, what a great conversation. It's so nice at school board meetings when we can talk back and forth instead
Sure.
of just listening and being
Yeah.
all polite and everything. So I struggle with that. But no, I just loved the fact that I haven't been 18 for a long time.
Right.
But we can't forget as adults what it's like to be 18. Or
Right.
we cannot help our 18-year-olds. And so,
Exactly.
So this whole process, to me, has given credibility to the lip service I think sometimes people on the school board are accused of giving.
Sure. But I mean, Gavin, this goes back to a conversation you and I have had a while back about student responsibility and students taking more ownership for their learning,
Yes.
students having a feeling of, well, it's my school too.
Yes.
Why can't I have a say in where we're going?
Exactly.
And so if you and I have had this conversation, I think you were saying to me, all right, we haven't made this kind of Herculean leap yet, but I think we're moving in the right direction. Do I have that right?
Yes, of course. And I know I've had that conversation with you as well as others. And that, among other things, was definitely a key focus on what we wanted to preserve and protect while we were still moving forward with this new policy.
Right, right. And then, Alice, I was talking to you earlier, too, and we're talking about, let's just take the high school, for example. And so you've got, 4 assistant principals and now an interim principal serving in that capacity. And I think what we talked about was when you go back to the fall, coming off that terrible summer, as you already alluded to, and you looked at the relationship or the communication vehicles for student-teacher relations and student administrative relations, it was sparse, right?
Yeah.
And I think what you're seeing now is somewhat of a sea change.
Yeah. So I mean, it's definitely very early, so you can't see everything, but it looks like we're moving in the right direction. It's great to have our interim principal here. Our assistant principals, we feel, are even more involved, and it's great to have them as a positive presence in our school because you can always reach out to the head principal, we know that, but also having those more localized assistant principals has been really great. And just sending out the message of we're here to have a positive community where we take conversation and we want to hear what is heard is really great, and I think we're moving in a good direction.
Yeah, Barbara, you and I talked about this too, the lines of communication and being able to have open lines of communication and not have fear that if I go to Alice and express something, it's going to get back to Gavin and Gavin's going to be mad at me.
Right.
And so trying to remove those barriers and to feel comfortable about going forward and saying, look, here's my issue, can you help me?
And this has also been incredibly helpful to teachers. So I taught in the district for 21 years.
Right.
So I have a very close relationship with lots and lots of faculty here. And
Right.
I'm often the sounding board for their issues because
Sure.
they know I'm a person that's safe on the school board. And
Right.
we've had a culture where it isn't always safe for teachers to express things.
Right.
And I can say that this survey
Yeah.
and the conversations and discussions and credibility coming from the board
Yeah.
for their voices has made the teachers have a shift in their comfort as well, which you won't learn if you don't feel safe, and you can't teach if you don't feel safe. And so teaching and learning, which is what's supposed to go on here, right? I feel has taken a turn for the best now because we have this culture of safety and sharing and clear lines of communication. Who do I go to? And if I'm not comfortable, then who do I go to? All of that stuff is laid out for students and for teachers. And so I just feel so positive about that.
Right, and I think, the truth should be told here that, the Concord school system is a very good school system.
Yes.
We've had very, very good dedicated teachers up and
Forever.
down the line from
Yes.
kindergarten all the way to high school.
Yes.
And so let's remove that from the table for purposes of our conversation. We know we have a good staff and we know we have a good program. What we're talking about is these internal communications and
Yes.
relations, and
Yes.
students and teachers feeling comfortable talking about whatever the issue happens to be,
Yes. Yes.
without fear of some sort of
Right.
reprisal coming
Right.
down on them. Teachers felt that, students felt that, administrators felt that. And then
Right.
Gavin, you were talking to me earlier about, well, I noticed in the fall, the administrators felt overwhelmed.
Yes, of course. And now that the stress has been relieved from their plates, it's definitely trickled down to the teachers and the students themselves. And I think for students to feel at home and like they can be heard, the teachers and the administration need to as well. And everybody feels more at home together when everybody does belong there.
Yeah, so Alice, when you model the behavior, so if my behavior is one of open communication and my door is always open,
Yes.
and you know that when you come by to ask me a question about something, I'm responsive to you, it sends a message.
Yeah.
And so that message then spreads and other people feel the same way. So you have to model the behavior.
definitely.
Conversely, when you're closed up, the door is shut, don't have time, did you schedule an appointment? I don't remember seeing you on my docket. I mean, that changes the dynamic. And so then you say, oh, I'm not so interested in talking anymore.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. I think we talk about you can create these policies and that are really great, but if we don't change the culture, then nothing's going to change. So having things like that, having that open communication, just the open place where you can talk, just makes, I think, everyone feel safer and more at home.
Well, and we just had this unbelievable professional development day. So
Yeah.
it was all the teachers in the district. You had Monday off, So you you slept in. So what I will say,
Yeah.
this piggybacks on what you said perfectly. So we have to, and what you said, we have to model these behaviors. So,
Right.
So of course, this was geared for teachers, and how do teachers teach empathy or teach kindness or
Right.
offer a safe classroom. And every single workshop started with us looking at ourselves.
Right.
Like, I can't teach empathy if I don't have empathy for myself.
That's very cool.
I can't create a safe environment if I don't feel safe. So it was such permission for the teachers to truly be themselves, and it was the things that we shared and the things that we talked about. It was like I went home just high as a kite because it was such a good day, and it just will make it better for you guys because it made us better.
No, that's an excellent point. They had a series of workshops that centered around all those issues, mental health issues, open communication issues,
Domestic
kind of
violence.
an old story
Yes,
book that goes
yes.
back to the 60s, I'm okay, you're okay,
Yeah.
where you're creating these opportunities for folks to be able to have a good conversation about where they're at. Another conversation we've had at the school board level, and also I think at your level too, which is, take the hat off. And so I'm a superintendent. I have my superintendent's hat on, right, or my principal's hat.
Yeah.
And so when we're having these conversations, you take the hat off.
Right.
And so now I'm a person just like you, and it's a collegial relationship.
Yes.
Yes, I'm older and I have a certain title that comes with my position, but that doesn't mean to say I can't have a one-to-one conversation with you about whatever the issue happens
Right,
to be.
right.
And we can disagree. And you could say, well, thank you for your opinion, but I disagree, and you move on. It's not about, well, you can't disagree because I'm in charge. And so I think that whole thing is starting to be moved away, if you
Yes,
will.
yes.
And I think you're now seeing much more conducive conversations. And I mean, I give Mike Reardon, the principal, and his assistant principal a lot of credit in being able to generate that kind of a dynamic where we can sit down, take our hat off, and have a
And
conversation.
that's been the culture shift. And I would
Yes.
say that that's not just true for students, but for our faculty and administrators as well.
Yes.
There's been a big shift in feeling okay to share, and the line of communication for them as well.
Right.
And and if you're feeling uncomfortable, giving the option to speak to somebody else.
Right.
That's a wonderful, wonderful reality for our faculty, which is going to make us better servants of our students.
Yeah, absolutely. And Alice, we want you as a student to feel, I mean, you're a junior, so you're going to be here next year.
Yeah.
We want you to feel like you have a choice, or you have an opportunity to help the school move in a certain direction. So it becomes, as you and I have had this conversation, it becomes your school.
Yes.
It's not my school.
Yeah.
It's not the administration school or the school board school. It's your school. And you have an active role to play in helping to shape the future of that school. You want to have voice. You want to be in a position. And of course, when you do have that voice, again, like you and I talked about earlier, you feel like you're making a contribution.
Yeah.
You feel like I'm being heard,
Yeah.
that they're listening to what I have to say. It's not, oh, there's another one of those
Right.
students again.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, and I'm glad I've been able to do that, and I think Being a part of the school board has helped me do that, but there's also so many other ways. And I'm glad that we can take what we're doing to help other students feel like it's like that, because there maybe it's just a few students who might have roles like Gavin and I, but it's important that all students feel like they can have that role in our school, and it's not just a few of us. So it can become all of our schools.
No, I think that's an important point. And so my question for you, Gavin, is aside from all the other conversations you and I have had, which I've alluded to, where do we go from here? So what are you guys going to do as a result of all this?
So for me in my position, I know I probably really won't see all the fruits of what I've been doing.
Good point.
But I really hope that I can set the path to allow other students to follow behind me and give them a voice and give them paths and methods of achieving what they want to do and their change that they need. And I take pride in being able to know I have that power to give back to those students.
Key word, Barbara, he said pride. Yeah. How often have we, missed that opportunity where teachers and students feel proud about who they are and what they represent?
It's been a tough year. It's been a tough year for that.
Yeah.
And I think, we all know the big elephant in the room, but there are always multiple things that can go on day to day or behind the scenes that can whittle away at your self-confidence.
Right.
And to have non-prideful pride, but pride of ownership,
Yes.
and feeling connected. So I think of these guys, and I think how good it will be to be walking through a classroom and overhear a conversation that totally supports a policy that you helped develop. Oh my gosh, it's working. I just saw this amazing thing. Or you get through a whole class with this positive conversation that's open and supportive and caring, and you think, okay, my work helped shift this culture. And those are the things that I hope not just you, but all of our students get a sense of feeling, so that they leave at the end of the day feeling like they're leaving their school, not just Concord High or Millbrook or Broken Ground or Runlet or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And it's not just at the high school level. So we can do a lot of things because we're older. And so maybe we're in more contact with teachers and higher admin. But I think it's important that it's not just a culture that we instill into our high school students, that it goes throughout our elementary and our middle schools too. So.
Yeah, well said. I mean, this whole thing, and Barbara, you and I have had this conversation privately as well as in the school board. It's a K through 12 operation, and we want to be able to have these conversations at every level where kids and parents and teachers feel comfortable about what's happening. And what I don't want to hear is the parent who says, I couldn't talk to the principal, I couldn't talk to the teacher, and they come to me or they come to Barbara and they say, what do I do? I want that to go away. I want them to feel comfortable talking to whoever they need to talk to about a given situation. Again, it's open lines of communication. And again, what are we all here for? We're here for the best interests of our students. So what can we do on behalf of them? That's a good conversation to have.
Always.
No one should feel bad about that.
Right. The other group here is parents. So we had several parents this summer.
Yeah.
Lots of parents with students that have special needs, but just concerned parents that had a voice in these meetings. But there are lots of parents that don't ever feel empowered to speak out. And so when their children come home and talk about a positive culture shift, Mom, this happened today, then that mother now has that much more safety and confidence in sharing her opinion. And so that's another piece that, it's just all those foundations.
Well, you're actually talking about something else too, and that is success breeds success.
Yeah.
And so when parents feel comfortable, students feel comfortable, it spreads.
Yeah.
Alice is going to talk to her friends. Gavin's going to talk to his friends. Your parent friends are going to talk to their friends, and they're going to say, no, they do listen. And I did have a good conversation. And they go, oh, I guess things are changing then.
Yeah.
And like, you said, Alice, I mean, it's not overnight. It's not going to happen, A goes to Z automatically. But there has been significant progress made.
Yes.
There are many of these little success stories that are now spilling out, and people are picking up on them.
Yeah.
And there's more of, as you said, Barbara, this culture shift where people are feeling more comfortable about the kinds of conversations they want to be able to have and not feel concerned about what the aftermath might be.
Exactly. And that's always I'm someone who's quick with my mouth sometimes, and so I've had many experiences of saying something and then thinking, oh no, what have I done? And these types of settings and some of the things that our discussions over the past year, and even before, districts grow and change all the time.
Right.
And you can seldom get through a school year without things going on that are uncomfortable. But to be able to speak and then not feel badly that you've spoken or worry about your speaking, I think is something that, again, I would apply it really to our parents and to our students as well. I guess everybody.
Yeah.
We all, I'm thinking about who feels uncomfortable with what they've said. And I think sometimes that can be endemic of any kind of growth. When I was coaching all the time, I would tell my runners, you don't learn anything from a good race.
Right.
You learn from your struggles. And so as a district, instead of just bemoaning our struggles, how do we use them to make ourselves better? And that's
Right.
another thing that this survey really did well, was all right, let's look at everything that has gone wrong and how do we repair it or rebuild it or modify it to make it work in the future. And so you take the bad and you make it good. So it was a really bad race last year, but we're learning from it.
Yeah, I think also what I've noticed in the building, and I don't know if this is just part of the culture that exists in Concord, but I don't see the sort of factions or groupies that I've seen in other schools where I got, oh, that's the intelligent group, that's the sports group, that's the this group, that's the that group. So I don't see a lot of that. What I see is a more,
They intermingle a lot
yeah,
here.
intermingling of all different kinds of groups, and I was really pleased to see that. I didn't sense this sort of group mentality.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that we have a lot of that here. I think, I mean, I haven't been to another school. I've only been in the Concord School District my whole life, so I haven't really experienced anything else, if it's worse or better. But I know so many different people that do so many different things.
Yeah.
And I think that's so cool. That does nothing but make my experience here better. So.
Right, right. Gavin?
Yeah, I really am happy with the fact that I know I can move around from group to group. I know there's people that I can, depending on how I'm feeling that day or what I want to talk about, who I want to be with, I can spend my lunch with 5 different groups in the same day if I wanted to.
That's great. And plus, it's a learning experience, is it not? Because you
Oh,
see yourself
yes.
in different entities. So you might be in the theater group, you might be in the sports group, you might be in the music group, and you might be a part of all of those things. And so each time you're with a different group of people, and it gives you a different reflection of yourself because you're with these different people, and it helps you to better understand who you are, as opposed to I'm only with this certain group.
Right, right.
Because that defines you only in those small terms.
And life is so not like that. In the
Exactly.
real world, when you go get your first job,
Yeah.
or you go to college, I remember I
Right.
went to BU, which is a big school, and
Right.
the happiest part of the first week of my college experience was that it didn't matter.
Right.
Nobody was popular or unpopular.
Right.
Everybody just was.
Yeah, there you
And-
go.
And
Yeah.
that's the reality of life. So to be able to have that here,
Yeah.
to have a school where a really good athlete is also on the math club,
Right,
and
right.
then that mathlete is got the lead role in the play. You know,
Exactly.
you have these people that
That's exactly what I'm talking
right,
about.
right.
Yeah.
And that's that's been this way since I was here.
Yeah.
I think sometimes Concord itself can feel like a middle school cafeteria. You're defined by your neighborhood no matter what. I will
Sure.
always be a North End girl, and that's who I am.
Sure.
But in the reality of the school is that it all meshes. So it doesn't matter what elementary school you went to or what park you hung out in.
Sure.
You all get together and you have all sorts of kids hanging out at that park or at that restaurant so that is something I feel has we've been able to build on that.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
We only have a few minutes left, but I do want to just dovetail a little bit with this role of the policy committee and talk about your role in the school board. Not every school district has student representatives on
Yeah.
the school board. Can you just briefly tell us about your role in this and how that's helped you to better understand what we do?
Yeah, sure. So Gavin and I, we go to the school board meetings that are once a month. So these have all members of the school board.
Right.
Here we listen to everything that's talked about. We hear the public voice. We ourselves make a presentation that explains what we've been doing, what the school's been doing, but also what we've been doing in terms of policy committees. So we don't specifically vote on anything, but it is an open place where if we have anything that we want to add,
Sure.
it's totally welcome to add anything. And then as additions that we've talked about this year, we've been doing things like helping on the policy committee, helping at the task force,
Right.
bringing things back to the school, which
Sure.
has been great.
Yeah. Gavin?
And then I think it also goes to Barb's point that the board members can look at the face of who they're actually affecting
Well
while they're
said.
making the policy.
Yeah,
said.
that's true.
And then on the other side of that coin, we can go back to the school, and the students now have a direct link to what is actually going on.
Right.
They don't have to guess or hear it second and third hand.
Right.
Yeah.
Excellent point. All right, Barb, you got the last word on this.
Well, I guess the overriding thing for me as a board member and an educator in the district and as a student in the district, so I've worn every hat. I'm a
Yeah.
parent. My kids grew up in the district. I really, really feel when we're all working together, so I'm not working for them, but
Right.
with them.
Right.
I mean, ultimately it's for them, but it can't be not with them
Right.
to work.
Exactly.
So I love how involved these two are,
Yeah.
more involved than some students have been,
Yeah.
which is just not a judgment call at all, just a measure of involvement. But I really also feel grateful that the board and the administration at central office has been willing to let them in to do the actual work.
Sure.
Like it's not my work to do. Just because I'm a
Exactly.
grown-up doesn't mean I know anything.
Right.
And so I love the fact that we got to sit back
Yeah.
as board members and listen to students.
Sure.
That's really, really powerful. That
Yeah.
goes a long way with me.
No, it's great. I mean, I'm really pleased that we have this opportunity to have student representation on our school board. It not only gives voice to the student body, but it also is that communication vehicle we talked about before. So information goes through you back to the students, and obviously from them to you and back to us.
Yeah, it's very
And the
good.
last thing I'll say, and we've talked about this a number of times, and that is, you know, all the policies in the world, as great as they might be and as well crafted as they might be, can't do anything if people don't, in their heart, feel for and want to have these things move forward
That's
in an
right.
appropriate way.
That's right.
So you gotta have the common sense, and you gotta have that heart of wanting to do the right thing to get things moving. You can't rely on the policy. The policy is just a safeguard.
That's right.
So-
Well, and common sense.
Common sense is-
More than once
Yeah.
in the last couple of weeks have I thought to myself, why do policies forget about common sense?
Yes.
And that's a poorly written policy if that's
Right.
the thought.
Exactly.
And so I just like that you said common sense, because we
Yes.
have to remember all that as
Yeah.
well.
Well, thank you all for coming in. I really
for having us so
appreciate it.
much.
Thank you
Yeah,
for
it's
having
been
us.
great, and it's a great conversation. And I appreciate the work that you guys are doing. School board, you know, as well as student representatives on
Yeah.
the school board, and again, giving voice to our students. And I think this whole conversation about the pride and ownership that it's my school, and
Right.
I can make a difference in where my school actually
Right.
goes.
Right.
And let's hope that trend continues.
Yes.
I look forward to hearing more from you. In fact, I'll see you tonight at the
Yeah.
school board meeting. And thanks again. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Alice.
Thank you.
Gavin.